I guess the non-podcasting world. But welcome back to our real world. Hey
Yeah.
everyone. Hey Sunny. Today is episode one, Powerful Voices on the Banner and Backbone Network. This is a new series Ellie and I are starting to put together to highlight and give a space that's safe for voices to speak, and powerful voices to speak, um, and to tell the stories that sometimes people are afraid to tell, um, but need to be told.
hmm
Um, and we want to give them a place to do that. Um,
Yeah.
and so I asked Ellie if she'd be willing to do this type of show with me, um, because she's an incredible writer and investigative, journalist at this point. I know you don't call yourself one, but you are an investigative author.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
that makes you feel more
What
comfortable.
works? Whatevs.
Because you deep dive and you do really, really intensely good research. You would be the analyst to an interrogator or the analyst for a lawyer.
hmm
Um, and I value your intelligence and the way that you
Thank
work
you.
and how clearly you write things. And so I asked Ellie if we could do a show together, and she helped come up with the name because was mine kind of sucked on this one. Um, but for this one is powerful voices because that's who they are. Is they're voices that are powerful and they're going to make an impact in our lives, and they are. Um, and it's our stories too. So Ellie, take it away, my friend. It's nice to see you.
Sure. Yeah, it's good to see you too. Happy, what is it, Wednesday? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I thought it was
Yeah, I think so.
Thursday.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're gonna talk powerful voices, and that's it's not me tooting my own horn. They're like stories of powerful voices that maybe aren't getting enough coverage or we've forgotten, we've lost the plot. And I think with the Epstein stuff, it's super easy to lose the plot, especially this week with the Maxwell deposition, which isn't really a deposition, it's just interviews for no real reason, which I'm picking through those, and I hope I'll have something tonight to post on that. But these are the voices, namely of the victims in this case, while we're talking about the Epstein case, namely the victims who cannot be forgotten as to why we are. We're not just fighting this thing because we don't like Donald Trump. We're not just fighting it because it's salacious news. We're fighting it because it's over 1,000 women and girls that have received zero justice, who have not even received settlements. They've been threatened until they dropped off the map, basically. But so that's where we are. But one of the most, not the most important, because they're all very important, but one of the names that we think of, the story is Virginia Giuffre, but not a lot of people actually know her full story. And the reason she sticks out is she fought. I don't want to say like she fought the hardest, she did the most, but she really, really stuck her neck out when it was just her. And I've said this before, when you see cases like the Weinstein case or the Epstein case, very often you see women come forward in groups, not singularly. And the reason they do that is because they have a support system and they can pool their finances and have legal backup. So you very rarely see someone come forward totally on their own. That takes a lot of bravery, and they are very likely to, be just railroaded as a result of it. But she did, and of course, there's like all kinds of stories about like her death, which was ruled a suicide, and maybe that's something we'll never know the truth, or maybe we already do know the truth. Maybe it was a suicide. Um, but it's just her life was so hard and complicated, and there were so many cycles that she was dealing with as a result of her childhood and as a result of this Epstein stuff, that it's not unlikely that she would have taken her life. She had a very, very hard life, but she was also in the midst of a fight. And I think that's where the questions lie, like why would you do something like that in the middle of a fight? But it was a very hard fight. So, I don't think if that's what happened, I don't think anyone faults her for that. I wouldn't think so. So anyway, the reason why she's kind of popping up for me is it was just announced that she's releasing postmortem. There is going to be a memoir coming out in October. And so I did just a little digging. There's not a lot on it. It's being published by I'm going to mispronounce Alfred A. Knopf. I don't know how you pronounce it, but they're a division of Penguin Random House. So when you have these major publishers, there's smaller publishers that live underneath them.
Yeah.
But Penguin is a huge publisher, so that means they took this book seriously. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's 400 pages long. And I don't know if you guys go look on your bookshelves, most books that you get from the library are not 400 pages long. That's a long book. Like I know just from my experience with writing, if you step into a publisher's office with a 400-page book and it's your first book, like they say goodbye.
Yeah.
So that's a long book. That's a lot of information. And I don't know if it's going to be one of these books that's a lot of photography, which sometimes in memoirs can be a disappointment if it's more pictures than words. I don't know if that would be the case in this situation because if she has a lot of photographs that have never been released, that's a big deal. So anyway, she's going to be publishing that in October. Part of that is she had a previously unpublished memoir that was part of her court case that she brought against, I think the one against Ghislaine Maxwell. It was a civil case, which was actually in 2015 is when she stepped up. So it was before Jeffrey Epstein was even arrested when she took Ghislaine Maxwell to court. And that's when the ball got rolling. That's when people started hearing about Epstein like super out loud, hearing all the stories. And that's why to me why it's so ironic like someone like a Steve Bannon stepped in to be his pal in 2017 because like these stories were all raging by that time. So okay, the story of Virginia Giuffre, and I'm going to kind of use I wrote an article called Jeffrey's Favorite, and it's on my Substack. I hope you can hear me okay. Um, but it's basically just the story of her life. And the reason I wrote it was as a result of Donald Trump, his little press briefing on his airplane a few weeks ago when he said, "Oh yeah, I do remember Virginia. Oh yeah, I remember that's why Jeffrey and I stopped hanging out, why we broke up or whatever, because he was stealing my employees." Here's a few reasons why that's not true. Number one, um, Virginia Giuffre was pulled from Mar-a-Lago, where she was working as a locker room attendant when she was 16 years old. She was pulled by Ghislaine Maxwell in the year 2000. In the year 2002, Donald Trump did an interview for New York Magazine, I think, where he said that, it's his quote, where Jeffrey Epstein's the greatest guy in the world. We've been friends for so long. Jeffrey likes women really young, blah, blah, blah. That was 2 years after they took Virginia over to Jeffrey's house. Not till 2 years after that, in 2004, did Trump stop hanging out with Epstein when they had a falling out over this place called Maison L'Amitié in Palm Beach, another big mansion in Palm Beach. And it was they had a bidding war basically, and they went behind each other's backs to tell each other's realtor they don't actually have money. This guy's fake. Sell it to me. Trump won, flipped it 3 years later, sold it to a Russian oligarch. So that's kind of the story of their actual falling out. It had nothing to do with Virginia. But the fact that Trump got on an airplane and said that he knew who Virginia was when she was working for him is a really big deal. And it's one of those many, many things that he says, well, we don't have to ask him questions. He will convict himself. And that is because he um, he had 150 employees at Mar-a-Lago. And for the idea of the billionaire owner of a resort to know the 16-year-old locker room attendant in the women's locker room is very, 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 very unlikely, right? In a normal
Really
world, that would
gross
never,
if he does.
right. So like, why even say that you know her? Like that doesn't help your case, but he doesn't actually think these things through. So going back to the beginning, so Virginia Giuffre's story is very sad. She had a very troubled life when she was very young. She was in foster care. When she was about 12, she was homeless. I mean, she just had a really rough life, and I don't know the circumstances of it, but she did not live with her family by the time she was in middle school. She ended up being trafficked when she was 12 by, oh gosh, what was his name? Eppinger, Ron Eppinger. Now, he was one of these other guys who was recruiting, saying, "We're recruiting you for modeling." So she goes, "Great, I'm a 12-year-old, I'm homeless." Got and put into a sex ring at 12 years old. She got away. He went to prison, but only for 21 months, right? Another short prison sentence. And then at 14 years old, she decides to move home and live with her dad. Her dad gets her a job at Mar-a-Lago as this locker room attendant because he's working as like the maintenance guy there. So he gets her a job. She meets Ghislaine Maxwell, and she's sort of like kind of not starstruck, but like it's this very sophisticated British woman who sees Virginia reading a book about massage therapy because Virginia wanted to be a massage therapist. She sees her reading a book on her break, says, "Oh my gosh, is that something you're interested in?" Like brings her under her wing and then hires her. Says, "You know what? I'm going to hire you. Come work with me." And it was like immediately that she was massaging Jeffrey Epstein and that the first night she was there, she had actually confided in them about her childhood. Things, like thinking that they were somebody she could trust, like and they totally took advantage of that. They were just like, "Great, this has already happened to this child. We can go for it." So she got stuck in the ring, right? That's how it all started for her. They didn't even offer her modeling. That was other girls. They just had her become their massage girl. Um, she started flying with them. She would go to New Mexico. He had Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. He had his house in Palm Beach. He had his house in New York. He had his island in, the Virgin Islands. She started traveling all over with him. The thing that she first introduced, and it was where we started to hear about kind of more of the sex ring being bigger than just like two sexual deviants who have now basically kidnapped this child and the weird thing for me, just to kind of back up a little bit, her father went with her on these trips. So he was there the whole time. And he said he didn't know. He didn't know. He said she's a very good actress. So, sorry, my children are being loud.
No,
Um,
I mean, welcome to real life, everyone. We
I
got
know, I
kids.
know.
We all
Sorry, I'm
got
trying not to
kids.
be distracted.
They'll be loud for
So,
us sometimes.
but that's a question that I have, and it's just a personal gut feeling for me with her family. And not her brothers and sisters because they were all fairly innocent. They were all kids, right? But with her father especially coming forward, I worry about the idea of exploitation of her story. Because, I don't know what her family life was like, but she didn't live with her parents. Her parents didn't
Yeah.
take care of her as a child. She was homeless at 12. And now there's this kind of big push of her family coming forward. And so I I worry that there's a little bit of exploitation there, but I also know that it's her own words in the book and that she wanted it to be published. So I'm glad that it's happening, but it's just kind of I worry about it and I question it. So anyway, so now she's a 17-year-old girl. She's traveling. She's going with them to England. They traveled a lot to Nova Scotia, which I don't really know what that was about, and I kind of feel like that needs some more digging. But yeah, I've noticed that a lot in the flight logs. There's a lot of trips to Nova Scotia. But she goes to London and she goes clubbing, and at this club she meets Prince Andrew, and this club is called Tramp, which I found interesting. But she meets this
Nothing
Prince
bad going
Andrew.
on there.
Yeah, he had just, been recently divorced to Fergie. Um, and then they go back to, I think Ghislaine's, still had an apartment in London. So they go back to her place and then he has sex with her. And that's the first time. He denies everything. He says he was at a child's birthday party eating pizza that night and there was no way and he'd never met her except for there's pictures. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell says, no, 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 those pictures are doctored. Very doubtful. They've been used in court as evidence, so likely not doctored. But so when Virginia says that she went on these very specific trips, they're all backed up by the flight logs from those exact dates. So pretty believable. So then she has this defamation lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell in 2015, and that's when she was really the first big big voice to come forward. There had been definite people in the past because Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in 2008, who had come forward, but she was the one who really went public, and she named many people. She named Glenn Dubin, and Glenn Dubin is somebody that Ghislaine Maxwell brings up in her interviews because his wife was Eva Dubin, and Eva Dubin used to date Jeffrey Epstein, and I think there was a little bit of jealousy between those two women. But Glenn Dubin was named as one of the men who abused Virginia. She named New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. She named MIT computer scientist Marvin Minsky, former Democratic Senator Majority Leader George Mitchell. So people ask if there's Democrats named. There are. Jean-Luc Brunel, who was a modeling mogul, who would also be arrested and sent to jail while he was on trial and would also kill himself in a jail cell. There was another unnamed prince, another unnamed foreign president, an unnamed owner of a French hotel chain, and then the lawyer Alan Dershowitz, who pops up. We hear his name a lot. He's very involved with Trump. He was very involved with Woody Allen stuff. He likes to be. He was on the
Likes to be
OJ case.
near this.
Oh yeah, he likes to be near. He would be a great Jeffrey Epstein friend because that was why everybody hung out with him, was being near to Hollywood, near to something, near to
Yeah.
the glow. Um, she claimed that he was someone who sexually abused her, but then later she recanted, saying, I was mistaken because I was traumatized when I was a child. And I question that. I think there's probably a lot of thought before you name someone in a trial like this.
hmm
Um, and he's a very powerful lawyer. So my guess is she
I was
dropped
going
it
to
for
say
Hulu.
that sounded like either it was pressured into
Yeah.
saying that, or there was a deal struck somewhere and she was pressured into saying that.
I don't I mean it could have been part of the deal, but she had this lawsuit against him and then he countersued. And I think it
Mm.
was just so much more likely that he would win just because he's like
He
OJ's
has so
lawyer. Like
much more
he has
money.
in power and so
He's
anyway,
amazing.
and he's so obnoxious. I wrote an article about him. He's very obnoxious. So anyway, so she turns 19. She's been in their clutches for 2 years, um, which most women weren't with them that long. Girls, sorry, I should say girls. She's
hmm
a grown woman. Most people weren't stuck there that long, and that's why I said she was Jeffrey's favorite because they did keep her a long time. But when she was 19, she was kind of getting old, a little too old for Jeffrey. And so he was having her recruit. And when you think of the girls who Jeffrey abused, part of part of the reason many of them didn't come forward was because they feel scared or they feel guilty because they recruited for him. Because he would have these young girls who are living on the streets, who are in foster care, and he would offer them $200 a head to bring other girls back to him. And so, you know, a lot of them are afraid that they've done something illegal, right? That they're just as bad as Jeffrey Epstein. And he told them that. He told them if they came forward, they would be in jail. And so a lot of women were really scared to come forward because they thought they had done just as much as he had. Um,
Which they
but
hadn't.
which they hadn't,
Let's be
right?
honest, they
Obviously,
they had not, and
they
it's a
had
scare
not.
tactic. And as a former interrogator, it's a very good scare
Right.
tactic.
And it's a
Like
threat.
Jeffrey Epstein wasn't bad at what he did. He's a terrible, terrible, terrible fucking human being. Like
Yeah.
point blank, zero qualms about that. He's
Yeah.
very, very good at manipulation, just like Donald Trump. Fraudsters tend to be very, very good at manipulation. So do
Yeah.
people with narcissistic personalities because they need to manipulate people
Hmm.
to feel good about themselves. So
And they all kind
And
of hang out with each other and sort
yeah,
of glean this information off of each other, like hone
yeah.
each other's manipulation skills.
Yeah, and they work
Um,
with each other in really subtle ways. Like
mhm.
manipulators find other manipulators, not because they
Yeah.
want to be manipulated themselves, but because they
Hmm.
want to figure out how to manipulate others better. That's why Donald Trump envies dictators because they're manipulators. That's
Hmm.
why a lot of men who didn't have any wealth or power tried to manipulate Jeffrey Epstein, who looked and acted like he had a lot of wealth and power, which gave him a lot of wealth and power.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And there you
sorry
go.
for
The
that
cycle
interlude, but
continues. No, I think about this a lot because I live next to Teterboro Airport, not to totally locate myself, but like every day I see private planes flying over my house and it creeps me
Mhm.
out. Like I just think like who's the next person who's doing this, right? Like Jeffrey Epstein's gone, but who's the next one who's already been doing this for 10 years, and we don't know about them yet. Um anyway, okay, so Virginia gets sent to massage school, right? Jeffrey Epstein just tells her because she's kind of getting old. She asked him to pay for her to actually go to massage school. And so he sends her to Australia. While she's there, she uses it as a reason to get away. She meets a man, she falls in love or she doesn't. It was only 10 days before they got married. And she calls Jeffrey and says, "I'm not coming back." He says, "Fine, have a nice life," hangs up on her, right? Whatever. Um, so she didn't come forward, obviously, for a while, but it took her becoming a mother, which is a thing that happens when you become a parent to a child. Your eyes are suddenly open to the things that you need to protect your child against, right? So when she became a mother, all of a sudden she was like, "Holy crap, this stuff happened to me." Like eyes open, wide awake. I now know what's going on. Um, but at the same time, sorry, but at the same time, you know, and this is something I've mentioned before when we talk about victims of abuse and people who are coming forward, I think people judge whether someone is believable or not based on their social status, their history, the way they speak. And it's so much easier, and this is nothing to slight this person, but it's so much easier to believe a person like Eugene Carroll, who is well spoken and educated and older and dresses really nicely and has a nice haircut. Like that's so much easier for us as a society to go, oh, credible.
Mhm.
Whereas when you have someone like Virginia Giuffre or when you have someone like Jane Doe, Katie Johnson, who seem very immature when they speak often, or they have, maybe they're a little too open on social media with their personal lives, or they're just a little bit messy. You have to understand that these people grew up in sexual abuse, and it's very hard to be an educated, you know, wealthy, upstanding citizen with a great, what I mean, when you have all this stuff that you're fighting against, right?
Yeah.
That's rare. And
Yeah.
so I think
Like
we need to
abuse leaves
remember
scars.
abuse leaves scars and cycles. And so when you talk about Virginia Giuffre, she married a man that she claimed, and I don't know if this is true or not, but she claimed abused her, right? But it's not unlikely, right? She grew up in a
No.
home that she couldn't live in by the age of 12. She had been in two, at least two sex abuse situations in her teens. So it's not unlikely that could happen. But then also she lost her children because people said that she was violent against her own children. That could be possible. Um, you know, and it's not to slight her story. It's not to say that she wasn't brave for coming forward. It doesn't change what she did. It just says that she has lived in these cycles of abuse, and
Yeah.
stepping away from that is nearly impossible. So she was in a car accident in March, and she posted that she was dying basically on Instagram. She said, "I have 4 days to live. Doctors say I'm dying." And her parent and her family came forward and were like, "She's not dying. She's bruised and banged up, and she's just, she was in a car accident, but she's gonna be okay." She was discharged, and then a month later, she was dead. Right. And again, people. and her family too say, why would she kill herself? You know, she had so much going on. But I think if you think of most people who say, why did so and so kill themselves? They had so much going on. We don't know what's going on the inside. Maybe she did. Maybe she did do that, or maybe she didn't. But it's not unlikely that someone who went through as much as she did wouldn't commit suicide. Like that's a possibility. It's a decent
Yeah.
possibility for her
People do it
situation.
for less.
Yeah,
People have
she had
done
a
it for less.
very,
Like,
very hard life. Um, and so and so we go back to this idea that Trump knew her. He probably did know her, and he
yeah.
probably wasn't too thrilled at the idea of her going, but then she went, yeah, that was pretty much it. That she went off and she worked for Jeffrey Epstein for a long time. So I am curious with this book. It will be interesting to see what they can say because she's not around to be sued, obviously, but her family could be sued, the publisher could be sued. I don't know if they had to come I don't know how it works with publishing as much as I would love to know more about publishing. I don't know if they have to come forward like you do with an article and reach out to the people in the book and say this is the statement that's being made for you. Do you want to rebuttal whatever? So I don't know if there's more things in there or if it's just a deeper dive of things we already know. I don't know. But I do know that it was something that she said upon her death she wanted it to be published. So that's kind of next steps.
I wonder too, with something like this, is obviously we're in a time of information suppression,
Hmm.
and knowledge suppression. I wonder if there is a major difference between, say, the original manuscript that was submitted and the one that's going to be coming out too.
That
Because
is
we
true.
know that
Right.
there's a difference in, you bought a book recently from Michael Wolff that
Hmm.
they are changing. They're reprinting with
Right.
edits in it to omit
Right.
certain things.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I know you can't answer that question because you don't
Right.
work in
I
the
I mean,
publishing industry. Um,
I would assume that from a publisher's standpoint, because this is such a big story and because people want to know so much, that they're probably willing to take the risk to publish the things that they may get sued for later.
mhm.
Um, Whereas if it was a story of Alan Dershowitz specifically, and somebody said he did something that they might not say that, right? Because that's not going to get read by as many people. But this is a huge story, and if there are things in that book that out people, that she names people, and we get extra information that we didn't have before, then I'm sure they're willing to take that risk and probably have good financial backing just in case. I would
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah, I would assume too. So that's,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing for us to remember too, is the story may come out, the book may come out,
Mhm.
and then it may come out later too that the manuscript is different, like the original
Yeah.
manuscript. More than likely it is. Like
Yeah.
even just like we have to remember, they will say the manuscript is different if you add an extra period in there or you
Hmm.
take away a comma.
Or something.
So
Yeah. Bridged. Right.
we have to trust that
Hmm.
Penguin, it's Penguin House.
Human random. Yeah. Random House. Yeah.
Yeah, Random House is doing the right things because in
Mm.
a lot of cases, and for all the history that we know of them as publishers, they've done the right things. They've published the books that others weren't willing to publish. They
Hmm.
have been willing to be truthful and they stand behind their authors.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, when this book comes out, is we all should get it. As many of us should get it as we can. One, to support her family,
Yeah.
um, because she's not here to support. Um, but two, the more of us who read it and the earlier that we read it, the better, because then there's less chance that they can go back and edit things and you don't get the original copy. And that's
Yeah.
really what you want. You
Yeah.
want the originals of these so
People
that
need
you
the first
know
edition.
everything.
Yeah.
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 Can you talk a little
And
bit about that idea of like first edition versus second edition? I know it's not story for Virginia herself, but like
yeah.
the idea of like editing out information, maybe even as a
I mean,
transcriber.
usually a first edition, second edition just has to do with like the first edition is just the publisher printed so many books in hopes that they would get sold. And if they all get sold, they go, oh man, this is more popular. We're going to print a bigger second edition. So usually it's just a printing thing. But in the case of like Michael Wolff, what he was saying is there was actually a differentiation between the audio version and the print version. And I went and bought the print version immediately when I heard that. But it's like, if you're gonna sue and remove a piece from the audio version, why am I still able to access the paperback or the hardback version? Um, so I don't know how that works. I just don't want to take any chances. If there's something coming out and I can get my hands on it before somebody says no, then I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, Sunny, so you can know the name of the book
Oh
is going to
yeah,
be entitled Nobody's Girl, a
nobody's girl.
memoir of surviving abuse and fighting for justice, um, by Virginia Giuffre. It's not out yet.
October
Um,
21.
October 21st, 2025. Publication by Alfred A. Knopf or Knopf, how like
Yeah.
Ellie said. It's a
I
K at the
don't know.
beginning of the word, and nobody knows how to say those words. It's
Yep.
like the pterodactyl, like there's a P at the beginning of pterodactyl
Yeah.
for some reason. Um, but it's it's gonna be Virginia Giuffre's book, and we should all get it. And we'll
Yeah.
make sure that we write down the title and link to where maybe you
Yeah.
can pre-order it.
Mhm.
Um,
And there's a little blurb. If you just look it up, there's a little blurb on the Penguin Random House on the Alfred Knopf website. So you can just they actually have a page for this book on their website. And I don't
yeah,
think you
and
can. Yeah.
M- make sure to, if you're going to order this book, get it at Barnes and Noble, get it from Random House website itself, things like that. Go to the smaller,
Hmm.
maybe even Barnes and Noble, maybe not, but like go to some of the smaller book sites and
Yeah.
bookstores and get it from there. Do not get it from Amazon. Don't get it from Walmart. Don't fucking waste your money on those people. Like, get it from people who are actually who like bookstores and online,
Yeah.
or even from the publisher itself. That way, you're not going through the middleman. It does support the families when we
Yeah.
buy these books. Like
If you
they're
have us,
perfect.
if you're in this, sorry to interrupt. I was just gonna say
No, great.
my hometown had two small independent bookstores. They still do. I still visit them. Um, if you live in a town that has a bookstore, you can just go to your bookstore and say, I want to pre-order this book, and they'll order it for you. So
Yeah,
most bookstores will do that. If you live in a big city like New York, you can do the very same thing, or you can go down to the Strand and say, are you going to have copies of this book? They will say, yes, we're getting so and so many copies. And sometimes you can reserve one, but usually there's enough you can just walk in same day.
yeah. Um, and so yeah, so make sure y'all go buy the book when it's available. Pre-order it to, like Ellie said, go to your local bookstore if you have one and ask them to
Hmm.
pre-order it for you, because then you make them money too, and you support
Yeah.
your neighbors, and that's a good thing. Um, I want to go back to Virginia's story because that's really the heart of what we're talking about today. And I titled the episode the the girl he stole.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you know about Virginia and what you know about this entire saga of events.
Hmm.
Is why do you think Trump latched onto her in such a public, or do you think maybe he didn't actually know her and he just remembers the name? Um, do you think it could be maybe even
Yeah.
both?
I don't know. There's just this weird
Not to give
sociopath.
Trump a pass on anything. This
No,
is
there's
not
like a
giving
weird
Trump a pass.
sociopathic tendency with both of them that's like, even if it's something bad, even if this is something that could put you in a prison, you don't want it to be somebody else's name on it because then they win. There's like a weird competitive, sociopathic competitiveness I don't really understand. Um, if Trump knew Virginia, it wasn't because she was working for him, right? If he
Yeah.
knew her, it would be probably after she went to go to Epstein's place or in the midst of that, to use a horrible word, but that transaction happening, right? I don't think he was aware of any of his employees. I don't think if you ask him now, he would be able to tell you who the locker room attendant is. Um, the thing with that, because you had these two guys who are very similar on a level of, I mean, I guess I could just say sociopathy again. They're not friendly. They're not very good looking. I would say probably Jeffrey Epstein was better looking than Trump, but like they weren't social. They just were awkward. But then you had Ghislaine. Ghislaine was, and she had a, I've been highlighting everything throughout these interviews, but like she had a quote where she said, I just worked in the office. I was in charge of hiring the staff. And she means she's trying to say it in a way like we were just a legit office, but it's like, no, no, you're saying something there. You were in charge of hiring the staff because she was. And many girls say that they sort of had red flags about Jeffrey Epstein and going to work for him, but when they met Ghislaine, they were like, "Oh, I'm gonna be okay." Like she's nice, she's sophisticated. You hear that a lot. She's very sophisticated. She was British. She was friendly and outgoing, and she just made me feel safe. And it was Ghislaine who was getting these girls. Like she has such a hand in all of it. Like maybe what she did with Jeffrey Epstein to these girls was because she was obsessed with Jeffrey Epstein and like there was a weird thing there. But it was fully her position to bring every single one of these girls into her home. She used to drive around in a town car with a driver and just hunt girls on the streets and just be like, get that one, get that one, get that one.
That's
Um,
gross.
and she'd bring girls with her to like, here, you go run out and grab that girl. Um, and so yeah, there's just this weird vibe that I get with Trump saying that it's like that someone else is stealing his thunder for him to not know about Virginia Giuffre. So of course he's going to say, "Yeah, I knew about her," or I tried to
Yeah.
stop him, or that made me mad. His whole shtick about like I told him no, and then he did it again. And I was like, "You're out of here!" Like it's just so stupid. Like it's just faceless and pointless, and like 2 years before he does this article about him giving a glowing review to Epstein. Like it's just he can't do his homework enough to cover all of his lies. So I think he probably did know her. I don't know if he abused her or not. I don't know. But I think anything that he didn't do, he probably knew about and was
Yeah.
complicit and just thought, this is just the world that billionaire playboys live in. And so yeah, I am interested to see what she writes. I'm curious. I was thinking that it would be really interesting if she got back in the book and was like, just kidding, Alvin Dershowitz was totally there. And now you can't stop me from saying it, the kind of thing. But yeah,
I
I'm
hope
gonna have
she
to wait.
does. I hope
I
that's
hope
what
she
this book
does.
is. Like I joke about it that I wish the big announcement that Taylor Swift had made was that she was going to read the entirety of the Epstein files
Yeah,
on
right?
tour as
Oh my
songs
gosh.
because millions of people
Amazing.
would listen to it
Right?
and it would sound pretty
Mm-hmm.
compared to the horrendous shit that's in it. Um, but like none of this, like they treat it like a joke. Like the men that do this
Mm-hmm.
treat it like a joke. And it's all or business transactions in their mind because that's what it is. We're not people to them. We're just tools for pleasure or toys.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I think in a society, obviously, where someone says, I'm rich and famous, so I can go grab women by the pussy in conversation on a recording
Mm-hmm.
has done that explicitly. Like you don't say those things unless you're comfortable saying them enough in private that they come out
Right.
in
Well,
public.
and this is something we're still not past accepting in society. Like when you think of someone like Leonardo DiCaprio, who has a reputation for dumping his girlfriends on their 25th birthday, and he's in his
Which is
fifth, like
super
50,
weird.
super weird, and he's in his 50, and people are just like, ha ha ha, that's just, Leo. Like we still live in this time when there is another Jeffrey Epstein down the street doing the same thing who hasn't been caught. When you're in this world of money and fame and power, and you live around other people with money and fame and power, and it's this alpha dog world of trying to outdo everyone. we're not past the idea that women aren't property, right? Because there's not a whole lot of women billionaires in that mix. There's a couple, but they're not really hanging out. It's all men and money and power, and then ultimately they are also the ones who can afford all the good lawyers. So, there you go. It's a cycle that just is continues. Like Me Too was great. That was a great time. That was a great movement. But like now it's kind of gone away,
Mhm.
and we're almost in a worse place than we were before, you know? So,
Yeah.
so what do we do about this? Like next steps, what do we do about it?
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I think first part of the next steps is we talk about it and we
Hmm.
talk relentlessly about it and we talk relentlessly about the victims. And those who had these acts perpetrated against. And at the same time, we call out the men, specifically the men who are doing this and who are allowing it to
Yeah.
continue to happen. And we name them and we continue to name them relentlessly that Donald
Yeah.
Trump is an alleged pedophile, that Mike Johnson let Congress go on recess to protect an alleged pedophile. That the
Hmm.
Supreme Court, the men on the Supreme Court were willing to take up Ghislaine Maxwell's retrial case to allow her to go free. Rich
Hmm.
men were doing these things to protect other rich men. They're not doing it to protect the girls. They're not doing it to protect boys. Matt Gaetz is a great example. They protected Matt Gaetz until he didn't
Hmm.
win, until he
Hmm.
left on his own. They protected him
Yeah.
knowing who he was and what he did. They protect each other. It's a game to them, and it's
Hmm.
something
Doesn't
that
Pete
they've.
Hegseth have a bunch of stuff on him?
Pete Hegseth has a bunch of
Yeah.
NDAs and sexual assault
Yeah.
allegations and harassment charges. But again, he doesn't believe women are anything other than property.
Yeah.
That's what his church, that's what Mike Johnson's church preach.
Oh.
They are dominionists and fundamentalists, and they preach that women are property and are nothing but vessels. And when you
They think
treat
we should
people,
remove the 19th Amendment. That's a big
yeah,
one.
there was a state legislator like 2 days ago or yesterday that let it slip that women are vessels in his mind and that all they're good for is
That's very,
babies.
yeah, that's a very common thought. I grew up in a lot of
And,
that. Yeah.
and yeah, and that, I mean, the fact that Ellie grew up into that or grew up in that mindset, in that world, like
Hmm.
we're millennials, both of us. Like Ellie and I are not very much difference in age, which means we grew up the same time frame. And that was in the 90s and early 2000s, and that was still an acceptable belief system. It still is like
It's still out there
and
right now.
yeah, and I think one of the other things other than just highlighting the victims of these things, because it's going to be both female and male victims that we talk about
Yeah.
on this show. Mostly, obviously, female victims because they are the predominant victims of
Hmm.
these types of abuses and assaults. And it's not just about abuse and assault, it's just victim stories. It's powerful voices coming forward. So if you have if you have a story that you think needs to be told, approach one of us.
Yeah.
Don't shout out your story unless you're willing to tell your story. But approach us and talk to us about it because we would like to hear stories and we'd like to make sure that people's voices get told because just like abuse in general, not just physical abuse, but emotional abuse, religious abuse, and trauma, those are all types of abuses, parental abuse,
Hmm.
spousal abuse the pretty much any type of abuse, somebody has a story to tell on it
Yeah.
because they're the victim of somebody else taking out their anger or their emotions in a way that is completely unhealthy and unsafe. And we need to highlight those because that helps change things. Like I learned, like over this past weekend, Ellie and I listened to a show. And I know we're off topic on Virginia, but it's important because it relates to it. Is we listened to or at least I listened to, I think you were there, Ellie, was our friends Dana Dubois and Lawrence Winterman. They have a daily show. And on Saturdays, they do a midday show. And they had an individual on who we are going to be having on our show in 2 weeks. Um, and she told her story. Um, and she told it really well. Her name is Allie. You'll see her all in a couple weeks. Um, and it was really powerful what she said, and it
Hmm.
moved me in a lot of ways, but it also showed me and helped me realize what I haven't done enough of yet on
Hmm.
my side, and not for me to feel bad about it because she wasn't shaming anyone while she was in
No.
it. She was telling her story, but it made me got thinking on things that we as individuals can and should do to help prevent these stories so that they aren't stories anymore, so that they don't even have to
Hmm.
happen, so that we can stop them. Because it's our job as parents, as she said really well, or Dana said, or Lawrence, one of the three of them said, was being a parent is breaking part of being a parent is helping break the cycle of abuse of generations before. Like,
Hmm.
you have to be willing to stop abusive tendencies that may have been done to you and change them. Um,
Right.
and Allie is someone who we wanted to invite on because she had an incredible story, but she also taught me a lot, even though I've come a long way, even as someone who's come a long way in learning about how to be just person and like a functioning male adult because a lot of us are not functioning adults. I hate to break it to you guys. You're not functioning well. Um, is that there's a lot of things men don't do that are so, so, so easy
Hmm.
that could help stop these types of things way before they ever even happen. And I'm talking about things like stop catcalling women,
Yeah.
or if your friends are catcalling, call them out for that.
Yeah.
Call them
And
out.
it's
Tell them that they can't do it.
yeah, it's as basic as like just not doing those things around your children from day one, right? It's just
Yeah.
like they get to a school age. So for my son who's in middle school, they get to a school age where you have to start talking to them about, because they have group texts with like a million people in them. And my son never checks his text messages, so he has about 8,500 missed texts. So I'm not super worried about it, but like sometimes things will pop up and I'm like, no, you can't be in that group. Like if they're gonna talk like that, then we're done. And he's like, I didn't even know they said that. I'm not even there. And and that is where you sort of lose a little bit of the control of what you've taught them because they're now in social circles, right?
Yeah.
With kids who may not have been taught the same things. But you give them a really good basis about how to treat people in general, men and women, and what their worth is and what the person next to them's worth is. And that could be a gender thing, that could be an immigration thing because we have a lot of immigrants
Hmm.
around here. All their friends are from different countries. Um, and so you just teach it from day one, right? And so by the time they get to these social circles, it's really ingrained in them, and they know even when they hear something, they have an inkling that they're like, that feels bad. I'm
Yeah.
going to step away.
Hmm.
And it's so easy, right? My husband doesn't catcall women around like, we've never done that kind of thing. Like, it's just so basic. It's just basic to be decent human beings and I think most people would say that when they have children, they try to be the best of themselves around their children, right? Like they do whatever they think that they are the best at as a human being, as far as like compassion or treatment of the whatever, they do it their best job around their children because they're just soaking everything in that they see. Something I wanted to step back with this
Yeah.
story and with the whole Epstein story, because I think it's a missing piece, and it's because it hasn't been, you know, told to us, is the idea of there being boys who are abused. Because we do talk about women, and it is a major percentage of adults that are women who are abused, but like it's a higher percentage with children. It's not higher boys to girls, but it's a higher percentage of boys with girls than it is men versus women as adults. Like little
Yeah.
boys get abused more than men get abused. Um, and so the idea of there potentially being male victims and creating a safe platform and space for male victims to come forward because they live
Yeah.
in a world where it's like women are victims, women are abused, men are kind of, men are violent and they're all hurting, it's which isn't true. But statistically, it's more true than vice versa. And so just like making sure that like men can come forward too, because men can be victimized too, and especially when they were children, and especially in this case, there's
Yeah.
likely boys involved in this case that haven't come forward because how do they come forward in this world and in this case and in this, with so much publicity when they're out there just trying to live their lives and move on. So that's something to really keep in mind because I think people forget that
Yeah.
that happens and it's still big. It's still a big
And
thing. So
yeah, and we want to make sure too is that when we talk about the boys, there will be people who come in the chats and go, but the girls, please don't do that when we're doing this. Like, I know there will be people who are probably not part of our community that come in all the time who understand these things that what we're talking about is because boys, like Ellie said, boys have been abused too. We just don't know. We just like we have to assume that boys were abused too, little boys,
we
children.
have a higher, and not to bring in religion with this, but like when you think of things like the abuses in the Catholic Church, you have a much higher
Mhm.
percentage of little boys being abused than little girls being abused. So when you look at like a major story like that, that's a huge sect of the population that
Yeah.
have stories. Like people I know have stories, and that was much more little boys than it was little girls. And so,
Mhm.
I mean, not to be like this huge bummer,
No,
but
but that's sort of the point of our show in general is we
yeah,
have to be willing to believe. We have to when boys do come forward, because at some point boys will start men who were boys at the time when they were abused will come forward. We know men who have been abused by people before. We all do in this crowd. We know
and
men
it's
who were boys who were abused,
yeah,
and we have to believe them too, because it's just
mhm,
the same. Like, if you can't believe her story, you then
mhm.
believing his story would be just as hard.
You
Like, you
believe
need
people
to believe
first.
both. Yeah.
Yeah, you believe someone first, and then if down the line the evidence proves otherwise, that's fine. But you believe them first, so that
Yeah.
they know that they are believed. That's a
Yeah.
big
You
thing that
give
somebody just needs to
the
step into
benefit of the
and
doubt.
believe. Mhm. So what
And
I'm
that's
going to
all
be
it really
doing,
is a
yeah,
benefit. Like, somebody tells you something, like, just imagine your children. If your children come to you, if you
mhm,
have kids, if your kids come to you and say, I got hit by somebody at school today, your
mhm.
first assumption always is,
They got hit by
are you
somebody.
okay?
Yeah.
And what happened? You
Mhm,
believe them. You automatically believe that they got hit. And your first question is, are you okay? What happened?
mhm.
And that's okay. You're not questioning the validity of their story by asking what happened. For someone who comes out with abuse, don't make your first question what happened. Like, that's a bad idea. Just putting
Mhm.
it out there. Don't put that out there, because people who are coming forward to you with things like abuse, they need time, and they need space, and they
Mhm.
need your empathy, but they don't need your pressure. Like, that's one of the things. Like, if someone says no to us on this network while we're talking, especially on this show when we have guests, if someone ever says no to us, we'll stop that line of questioning immediately,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
that's their boundary.
Yeah.
Um,
And it goes back to that idea of statistically for many years and many studies in the world over, less than 2 to 8% is a false report. So you always believe people. Just always believe them because there's a very
so
low
easy.
chance that somebody would come forward and like fake something like that. Like what for what? Like it's a miserable thing to fake, and nobody is. No one's doing that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I just have to jump off in just about a minute, but
Oh, absolutely.
I was gonna say I'm gonna keep bringing, especially after the third. So we have this victim statement press conference on the third, where I don't even know how many of Epstein's victims are coming forward. I don't know if they're new. meaning like they haven't been public before, or if they're just people speaking again in like in power. Um, but on September 3rd, 10 a.m., and there's going to be a ton of live streams. I bet there's going to be all over the news, but there's a big press conference with a very large group of Epstein victims coming forward to speak. And I was worried about like where they were coming from. Did somebody pay them from the wrong side to get them for, like why now? But it appears to be all very on the up and up. It's just something that they wanted. And so we're going to have a lot more stories and a lot more things to think about and mull over. And I just ask as we move forward, and I'll continue writing about this stuff. But when we think of these major stories and we think about Donald Trump, and we keep, everywhere we go, we say, release the files, release the files, release the files. We have to remember the files are stories about people who are abused. Like that's what's in the files.
Yeah.
And so you're releasing stories, you're releasing people's stories. And of course, redact names for people who don't want their names mentioned if they are victims. If they're not victims, then I don't care.
Yeah.
But we need to release the stories because we were not able to believe the people who told them. So we apparently have to see them on paper from court documents because we couldn't
Yeah.
just turn to them and believe them, right? Which is its own giant issue and why we probably don't need the files in the first place. But so I'm going to continue to write about these stories. And also I wrote about Ivana, like people along the way who have been kind of manipulated and hurt, and even though they were on potentially the wrong side of these issues, um, a lot of women's stories. So some things to pay attention to. And again, I always say like you can read my version or you can read. There's lots of really great versions. Julie K. Brown is a great reporter from the Palm Beach Herald, I believe. She's a really good person to follow if you can find her writing. Vicky Ward, and then of course Michael Wolff is
Hmm.
like Kingpin, my favorite. But these are really, really great and credible journalists who are doing humongously deep dives on all of this stuff, but have the actual stories of the women, and then I'm just doing my versions on my page. I've talked about the farmer girls because that really highlighted Ghislaine Maxwell's position in all this and how not innocent she is. So I thought that was very important. But they were also some of the women to come forward in the very first place in the beginning. There's a woman named Jess Michaels who's all over social media. She is, I don't believe she has a Substack, but she's interviewed on Substack a lot. And she was like one of the very, very first women to come forward in 1991. So she's a great person to listen to. But just continue to listen to the stories because the victims are getting stronger. I don't know if you guys have noticed, they're getting stronger and more vocal. And they have a little more wind beneath their wings with all of this because now it's not a Democrat Republican thing anymore. It's a release the files or don't, and that's a much bigger, much bigger group on one side. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in the coming week. We'll probably have to do a big breakdown on it and see what goes on.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like next week's episode of Powerful Voices is going to be pretty powerful. Um,
Yeah,
and the following weeks after that, plus we have some Ellie's exclusives that'll be coming out of all of these, and her work in this. So thank you, Ellie. I want to make sure
yeah,
you got your time and you can go.
yeah.
Um,
Gotta go to soccer practice.
oh, have fun. I remember
Yeah,
those. And so everyone, have a great evening. Thank you for joining us for
yeah. We'll
tonight's
see you guys later.
first episode of Powerful Voices, and we'll see y'all again next week.
See you
Thanks.
later.
Thank you,
Bye.
Allie.
Yeah, bye.